Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to this week's episode of Social Antics, another marketing podcast. You're joined again by myself, Dave Doyle, and my co-host, Dave Alton. How are you today, Dave?
Good. It's been a busy week, very, very busy week.
Yeah.
Things are starting to pick up again, I think, as we're coming towards the end of the lockdown. Business is starting to kind of readjust from the initial shock of being kind of open, then shut, then open again, then shut again. I think people are starting to look forward a bit. So no, a couple of exciting projects.
The one thing I noticed though about this lockdown, it doesn't really feel like a lockdown like the last one.
It's not like, I think people are a little bit looser about it. Like, the last time you had people queuing for hours outside supermarkets and stocking up on toilet tissue and stuff like that, I think people now are kind of used to it and they're kind of adjusting their lifestyle to a lockdown. Like, from speaking to a number of retailers, the amount of consumers who are now just doing all their eating on click and collect and stuff like that because they've got a bit of extra disposable income. So I think people are starting to adjust their kind of behaviour based upon they're not spending as much money going out socialising, so therefore it's more the in-home kind of side of things. I think
even when you look at the actual businesses that are open, not the same volume are closed this time to what was closed last time. You know, we still have some of the smaller, you know, they're essential, but there's some of them are a little bit open. Some of them are, you can see some of them are kind of trying to break the rules as much as they can to stay open.
Yeah, and best of luck to them as well. Like, I do find it a little bit ridiculous that you can go into Tesco. I think I saw something there during the week whereby there was I think there was a family went to a funeral and needed to buy shirts, and they couldn't buy a shirt anywhere, and even they went to Tesco and they couldn't buy because they had that section of the store closed.
They can buy cheese in the bag of cans when they're in there.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the but look, I think people are starting to. Things are starting to pick up again as much as they can possibly pick up coming towards the end of a lockdown. Like, do you know what I mean? But a lot's going to depend on the next couple of weeks. And obviously the UK has gone back into lockdown now as well, so look, hopefully we come out of it, and hopefully when we come out of it this time we stay out of it, because whatever about closing once or closing twice, I don't think businesses can take a third one, especially when Christmas is going to be really, really tough.
And I think from our point of view, watching businesses in terms of marketing and business, I think businesses, as you kind of mentioned, they were kind of geared up for it this time. So the online thing was done. They have their website up and going. They've been operating on social. They know what to do. You know, so now when it kicked in again, they were ready for it. Like, it wasn't a panic to get a website or an e-commerce site up or click and collect or what was it?
100%. Is it like, and it's worth saying as well, like, we speak a lot about retail, but there's a lot of industries out there as well which are kind of unaffected.
Yeah.
Like, I'm involved in a kind of a M&A activity now for a company involved in cloud computing, and again, very little impact upon their overall business. So there's some sectors that are untouched, but as we're going to go through today later on talking about tourism, there's obviously other industries who are adjusting and going to have to adjust pretty quickly.
And obviously someone like that now with cloud computing, they probably even increased a little bit, I'd say, would they, in terms of meant people working at home, using the services, you know, this kind of area?
Yeah, there's every business adjusts, so there's cost savings in terms of your light and heat and stuff like that. But overall, have they increased in business size? I would say probably not really, realistically. But there's still activity ongoing. It's not that complete shock of 90%. We're going to talk about hotel industry later on, but there's been a 90% drop off in revenue. Do you know what I mean? It's not that much of a shock. And they're kind of holding their own more so than anything else.
Okay. Do you want to kick off maybe with with a news item this week?
Yeah, I suppose it's just a small one that kind of came across my desk this week, and a lot of people wouldn't even realise it because it's not going to impact upon the consumer experience. But TikTok have signed a long-term licensing agreement with Sony Music. So obviously, for the listeners, if there's any music that is embedded in or used on the TikTok platform, they can't just use that for free. It has to be licensed from a Sony or a Psycho or any of the big music players. I
think this kind of follows on probably from what we talked about last week when we talked about that they teamed up with Shopify. So obviously now there's going to be a lot more ads and music and stuff like that.
Well, there's a point. I think it's for the user experience ultimately, in that if you have if you have consumers using certain music trends, and you see it for scrolling through TikTok, it's the same music kind of repeated over and over again. And for TikTok users to be allowed to use that music, they have to have TikTok has to have a license with the record labels. So this is just so initially when TikTok had their initial kind of burst, shall we say, onto the scene, they signed a number of short-term deals with these record labels like your Sonys and so on and so forth, and now they're looking at long-term deals instead. Now what I found interesting is that TikTok have apparently paid way over the odds for these licensing agreements, which I think is a bit strange in so much as that although music is fundamental to their platform, I would also say that a lot of these record labels have benefited hugely from their songs going viral on TikTok.
Yeah, you're kind of hoping that it gets included. Like you had the was it the Chase and Abbey song? You know, like absolutely they'd say they made a fortune.
Yeah,
from
Jason
it. Like,
Derulo had a
always,
couple
yeah.
of songs and stuff like that. So I think if I was a betting man, I would say what TikTok's strategy is probably going to be is similar to Facebook a number of years ago. Prove out the concept to the record labels that if your music gets traction on our platform, then your ticket sales in terms of concerts, downloads on Spotify and so on and so forth, those go up, and therefore in the future possibly the roles will be reversed in terms of the record labels will actually pay TikTok for whatever more exclusivity on their platform, whatever the case may be. So again, it's not going to impact upon the user experience in any way, shape or form, really, from what I can see. But it's just interesting to look at the business model and the way that TikTok are possibly looking in the future in terms of, again, bringing revenue into that organisation.
Very good. One thing that caught my attention this week was two news pieces, but the first one was Instagram started looking at the live feature that they have, and they extended it from 1 hour to 4 hours.
IGTV, is it?
Well, the Instagram Live, so actually going through your stories live, but you can actually, that was the other element of it now, is that not only is it changing to 4 hours, but you can actually live archive it as well, so you can actually keep it there for like kind of 30 days. This is now, like, the change now that they're doing, this is up on par with Facebook, because Facebook was 4 hours as well, unless you're using, like, going through the computer or, you know, using API or something like that, which was about 8 hours. But they're definitely seeing a change, I suppose, in where people are consuming content. Obviously now with the lockdowns and stuff, people are shifting and watching, whether it's, you know, someone like us, you know, we're interviewing people online, or, you know, content creators putting stuff up online, watching live videos. There's a demand there now for more than an hour, and, you know, whether it's webinars or whatever it is, it's all the shift is Instagram has been huge for it. So I think they kind of noticed that, and they're putting it up to the 4 hours.
Well, I think what I would have seen, so one of the industries that I'd be heavily involved in would be sports, and obviously there's no one allowed in stadiums at the moment, and we've seen a huge 90-minute match, exactly, yeah. So what you've seen is a massive jump in the amount of people watching streaming, but obviously streaming is expensive for a sports organisation to get an expensive camera and so on and so forth. So the easier it is for local football team, local GA team, whatever the case may be, to stream their matches, obviously it's better for the people at home. And again, just the different ways, I suppose, in that content is not only consumed but also created, I think is interesting. And this is a kind of a trend towards that, and you're correct. Webinars, conferences, even lecturing, all this kind of stuff, it's all going towards that streaming kind of service for the time being, and this is just a direct kind of response to that.
All the platforms are kind of reacting to it and doing their own way of getting, you know, people involved in the platform a bit more. But another thing that they're looking at bringing out is a way for creators to monetize a little bit more when it comes to live stream. So the only way when you're watching the live stream and you have all the comments below, you can now, well, what they're planning on rolling out is the idea of badges, that Instagram Live are going to send this out to about 50,000 creators to see how it goes. But basically you can sell badges at price points of, I think they have 99 cent, 1.99, or 4.99.
What's a badge?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Right.
That's in me notes. These badges help fans' comments stand out basically in a busy stream. So it's almost like you're paying to be at the top of a comment every time you put something in. That's so obviously it is. I don't agree with it. So basically your favorite creator, whoever you follow, you're going to buy a slot basically to appear in their comments, and hopefully they might see or call out or whatever it is. I don't know. I think from another side of things it might be helpful in terms of what we do in terms of advertising, that if you have a massive audience watching live video, would you be able to get your comment always up at the top? you know, in terms of if you're selling something or pushing something somewhere or awareness, I don't know how it could work, but that's possibly an area where it might work. But in terms of content creators and just someone buying a slot in your comments, I think it's a bit of a disastrous move.
It looks it's a bit cheap, and I, to be honest with you, I think those those comment sections, it's one thing that I would constantly ignore. Like I watched for the election now last night, for example, I was watching a stream of an online news site, and they were talking about those comments coming in. You can't follow them because there's literally thousands of people commenting, and there's no discussion. It's like Twitter on crack, like it's just constant. So I don't really get the. Now again, if it's a smaller court, like they're looking at a match or something like that, and there's commentary on the match, then that's a little bit different. But when you just have this kind of content dump of a load of people commenting on something, I don't think it.
They're following on, obviously, you know, Facebook on Instagram, but they're following on from Facebook. Have this idea of the top fans, where basically in the comment section you will get a top fan badge beside your name. So like, you know, businesses can, you know, I might comment or like a lot of content from one page and I'll be recognised as a top fan, and then you have to choose to accept it and actually show up on your profile.
In the face.
It is.
I know I'm the biggest fan of you. Like, oh, that's absolutely tragic. Oh, do away with that. Do away with that.
But if anyone wants to become top fans on our page, we won't say no.
Oh yeah, if you want to pay, what is it, 60 quid or 100 quid for a badge to appear on the top of her? To be honest with you, with the amount of comments that we get, you could just post without having a badge and you'd stay at the top for quite a long time. So it'll be alright.
So that was one of the news stories I seen. So we keep an eye on that. The next one was from local small independent food giant Burger King. Did you see this? Oh,
small local business. Yeah, absolutely.
They decided to bring out an advert during the week, basically promoting and pushing people to. The headline was "Order from McDonald's." Basically, the piece of content said, "We never thought we'd be asking you to do this, just like we never thought we'd encourage you to order from KFC, Subway, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Five Guys, Greg's, Taco Bell, Papa John's, just to get them all in there, or any of the other independent food outlets, too numerous to mention here. In short, from any of our sister food chains, fast or not so fast. We never thought we'd be asking you to do this, but restaurants employing thousands of staff really need your support at the moment. So if you want to help, keep treating yourself to tasty meals through home delivery, takeaway or drive-thru. Getting a Whopper is always best, but ordering a Big Mac is not such a bad thing. Take care, Team Burger King." I think, look, when you look at this, and a lot of people will look at this and say, "Jesus, aren't Burger King brilliant?" You know, and putting out a piece of content like this, and obviously, look, why are they pushing other brands? You know, you wouldn't see local brands maybe doing it. You're definitely not going to see these big corporations doing it. But it's a great piece of marketing, and I suppose that's exactly what it is from our point of view. Yeah. It's marketing.
Burger King are good at that type of thing. They did as well last year, where I think, I'm probably getting this wrong, but the concept is something along the lines of, for every Big Mac that you buy, X amount is donated towards, and for that day, Burger King took the Whoppers off of all of their menus across the US. So similar idea, but again, I think in terms of a physical retailer that doesn't have a huge online presence, I think the social media team at Burger King are one of the best in the business. They are absolutely phenomenal. They did a thing last year where they went back and started liking old tweets, like 2 or 3 years old, from influencers online like Casey Neistat. And then of course Casey Neistat, what does he do? He makes a video of that going, "Burger King, what are you doing?" Do you know what I mean? And again, just that kind of stuff. And they did another thing then last year on similar enough actually to what we call it, kind of the live experiments, or the kind of hidden camera kind of genre of movies, where you had a kid getting bullied, and you basically, they were calling people out saying, okay, this kid was getting bullied in our Burger King stores, how many people actually intervened? And again, really clever piece of content.
It's a lot of they've, you know, what we would call probably guerrilla marketing, you know, on the street kind of pop-ups, bus stands. They do a lot of this kind of stuff, but as I said, like, it's 100% marketing, you know, and people would look at this and they would think, as I said, it's brilliant, but you have to be kind of a little bit skeptic, I suppose, and look, is it actually genuine? What is their plan? So the fact that they're mentioning other brands is going to hype up a bit of publicity. They mention another brand's product at the end by saying the Big Mac, you know, and that's going to share publicity and awareness, you know, whether it's going to be good or bad, but it's all promoting back to Burger King.
It is, yeah. But I think with something like that, is it a bit of publicity? But to me, it falls into the category of, it's marketing, but ultimately the message is kind of communal. We're all in this together, that type of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I generally wouldn't be too critical of Burger King in terms of some of the stuff that they do, to be honest with you. They would be one of the better brands out there. No, they're one of, I'm in a good mood today.
Good mood. It's me going to town on the brands today, isn't it? So I think that's kind of it that we have for news stories. But I suppose before we go any further, the one thing we wanted to mention for this week was last week we kind of touched on an idea of about kind of a little bit of a challenge or a campaign, and we actually rolled that out during the week. The Gift Local challenge, rolled it out online, and thankfully it's after getting a good bit of traction. There's more coming down the way, so it's been getting good. What do you think, Uday?
Yeah, just buy stuff. Go out and buy stuff. Again, some people don't have as much money as they had pre-COVID. A lot of people who would be in jobs are on COVID payment, or they're not working as much, but they're getting they're on the COVID payment, shall we say, or they're not spending as much money going out on the booze or whatever the story is. Again, if you have a few extra bob in your pocket, try spend it locally. Again, go out, get a feast of wings, get a cocktail, do whatever you need to do to support local businesses, and just buy shit.
Yeah.
Buy loads of stuff.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind it again was that you go out, you gift something to a friend or a family member from a local business, share it online. The reason why is that you're creating awareness for that local business, and then you nominate 3 friends to go and do it again. It's just a cycle, it's just a bit of fun, but in the end of the day, you're mainly supporting local businesses, which is definitely important at this time.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I suppose it's one thing that, again, we were speaking at the start about adjusting consumer behaviour. I would have been more inclined to go out and eat something rather than deliver something in, particularly if it was from a kind of not a takeaway, no, but a midway kind of mid to high end kind of a restaurant, shall we say. Whereas now there's actually more of that. Now I'd be more inclined, okay, I actually want a decent meal tonight, not a takeaway, so I'll get a click and collect from the local rotisserie or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So again, people's behaviour is changing, and again, if you can support local businesses, if you can, then absolutely do it.
Brilliant. So I think today we are going to go and talk about tourism.
No, you forgot one of the main things in the news.
No,
How
we're
can you
not
talk about the news and not mention
we're brushing over that.
Not mentioning Big D?
Because the reason why is because when we are recording this podcast, we are still in the middle of the count and we don't know what's happening.
Still in the middle of the count, but the way it is at the moment is it's leaning Biden. It was for a while leaning Trump, and I was like, how has this happened?
Sweats was coming out.
How has this happened again? I thought last week with the prediction that we made, which was there's such a high turnout of voters that surely Trump got his bounce before he was president, and there'll be no one more vote for him based on his carry on the last 4 years. Clearly, I have underestimated the kind of redneck population who vote. So no, he's done, Trump, I think, has done phenomenally well in terms of votes. It's actually quite impressive, because I thought Biden would blitz him, but it's looking good though. It's looking as if Biden
talking about votes there, only a couple of hours before we started recording this, was actually Biden is after breaking the record for the most ever voters voting for him, so previously held by Barack Obama. So it's definitely showing that there is more people out voting this year.
No, there is, no, absolutely. And look, hopefully it goes. I was getting worried when I think Trump took Florida, took Texas, and it was looking as if he would take Michigan as well, and it's looking as if it's going in a different direction now, which is good. But of course, as expected, Trump came out about probably 3 or 4 days before the actual result is probably going to be confirmed, and said, we've won this election is a whole fraud. So I was saying, again, I was saying it last night, I tweeted about it, the worst thing that happens in Ireland during any election is that you'll go to the 5th count in Cavan Monaghan at 6 o'clock in the morning, kind of a thing, where you might have the Healy Rays lighting a bonfire in Kilgarvan. In the US, I genuinely, I think, looking at probably the riots that are going to be coming in the next couple of days, I think it's going to be absolutely insane stuff altogether. And it's shameful, really. It's I've never come across, you had Bush and Gore, where there was a bit of a dispute over the end result, and it was resolved. Not a huge amount of violence associated with it, but neither of those candidates instigated that violence. Now you have Trump actually saying to his supporters, go out and burn shit, basically, because this is fraud. This is not a legitimate election.
It's just going to rile people up,
Oh, completely. No, it's deplorable behaviour, and it's shocking to see.
The best video actually I seen from during the week in terms of Trump was, I'm not sure if you've seen this, was a guy, it was shared on Twitter, but a guy said basically you couldn't write this, and Trump was at one of his rallies and he's talking about, we need to get that lovely phrase of made in America back onto our products and all this. So the guy that's videoing it is one of the Trump supporters, but he takes off his Trump cap and literally looks at the label and made in China.
In China, of course, yeah.
One of the best videos I've seen this week.
But that's what it's been. I actually think I was listening to a show on YouTube last night, and they were trying to, because they were kind of similar to my opinion in terms of how has this been as close as it is. And again, he might come back and win. This hasn't been declared yet. But they were doing the analysis of the types of voters and the people who were supporting Trump and the narrative and stuff like that. And what they basically determined is that there was a lot of people who wouldn't usually vote, predominantly uneducated men, predominantly white men as well. But there was a kind of an element of kind of machoism about Trump as president, and a lot of Americans still see America as the one and only true superpower, as opposed to China or any of the up and coming BRICS. So I think that probably skewed people a bit, in that you see Biden, and again, he's not a very powerful speaker. He hasn't got that authoritative kind of masculinity kind of a feel to him. He hasn't
even put himself out there massive amount in the last few months, like doing massive amount of interviews or anything like this, which the others would have done leading up to it. I don't think he's put himself out there as much. But look, when you look at the votes, in terms of, you're roughly at the moment, you're around, I think it's 49-51, and somewhere around there at the moment. He hasn't done a massive amount, but he's still up there with him.
But I think this was an election that Trump lost, not because of his electioneering, but because of his carry on in the last 4 years. I don't think Biden...
Doesn't matter who it is, it's just not Trump.
I don't think Biden won this election by any stretch of the imagination. I don't, he's been... Again, I think he's been a very uninspiring candidate. Not as uninspiring as Clinton was, but there's an element of kind of Obama light and going back to the... look...
Well, he's involved, he's in that bubble as well.
For me, for an American president... Be dignified, don't start wars for no reason. Do those two things and you're doing a better job than Trump has done, basically. And that's what Biden is. He is very, very safe. Dignified and safe. And I think that's what people want and what people voted for.
I think another thing we kind of forgot about in the last few weeks, which literally I only saw an article on it there earlier and I forgot all about him, was Mr. Kanye West. That a lot of people forgot he's actually still there in the election. So he's ruled out now, obviously he's nowhere near it, but he actually got over 10,000 votes.
I did.
And that was... He got one... No, sorry, I read that wrong. He got 60,000 votes. But one state alone, over 10,000 votes in one of the states alone. Even that many people that think this guy is a good fit.
Was he seriously on the ballot? I didn't even...
Not in all of the states. He was in some of them, but I saw something there earlier on. Yeah, but he got... You're talking 56,000 votes. That many people, even you think about that many people going out and voting for him.
I might run for election in the US the next time.
We'll give it a go, will we?
Give it a go for the crack. A bit of political marketing.
So we kind of mentioned it previously. We come back. We might have a bit of breaking news. Hopefully by the end of this podcast, we might have the who the new president
Unlikely,
is.
I'd say it's going to be days until Pennsylvania's called. But look, we'll see how we get on.
Maybe for next week. But what we're going to talk about this week is basically how tourism has changed. But maybe looking towards the future and what way it's going to go and what's happening at the moment in terms of different areas. Do you want to kick us off there, Dave? What do you think?
Yeah, I think. Look, 90% of that industry has been absolutely decimated. Basically, I think hotel bookings during the last lockdown dropped by something like 95% or something, and it hasn't. And it's not really recovering yet. There was a little bit with people going on staycations and traveling internally and stuff like that.
Campaigns around staycation. Yeah.
But I read a stat during the week that I think that on average, since COVID kind of kicked in, the tourist industry is losing roughly about 27 million per day. Was a figure that I saw. I don't know how they came to that figure as such, but it's staggering the amount of loss in that particular industry. But I think what's going to be very, very interesting is how businesses in the hospitality and tourism sector adjust
and bounce back.
Not only in terms of local businesses, but also some of the multinationals, your TripAdvisors, your Airbnbs, and so on and so forth. But
I think even looking at, as you said there, the big side, but even think about the likes of your Fáilte Irelands and all these kind of stuff, and how they're actually going to, whatever country it is, but how you're going to actually get people travelling again. I think is a big one.
Yeah, and I think there's going to have to be a lot going on in terms of Brand Ireland, in terms of reimagining what that is. On one hand, if you think about the lockdowns have been happening very, very with short notice.
Yeah.
And if you get a reputation as a country that you're going to shop down, then again you're not going to book holidays in those particular spaces. So there has going to be, now I know this is across Europe, but you wouldn't want to get a reputation within that European marketplace of somewhere that does shut down without any kind of policy in place for tourists coming in, or whatever the case may be. And then if you look at why do people come to Ireland, on one hand you've got the kind of outdoor scenery, Giant's Causeway, similar enough in the UK, all that kind of stuff. But then if you look at Ireland and the UK in terms of tourism, a lot of it is based around pub culture.
Yeah.
And that's obviously something that is going to be very, very difficult to kind of reconcile into the future. Because again, even when lockdown comes to an end, we're not going back to everything is open again. You're probably going to be on level 3, outdoor dining only, for X number of months over Christmas, and then how you kind of ease back into it then after that. Now, I think when, like, hopefully what happens is that there is a vaccine and things level out, but if there is this kind of up and down curve in terms of kind of mini lockdowns and changing in restrictions over the next kind of 12 months, there is going to have to be a lot of kind of a rebranding, a reimagining around, well, you would come to Ireland and this is why you would come to Ireland, or you come to the UK, this is why you would come to the UK. So, like you said, there's a big exercise there for Fáilte Ireland.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you said, like, definitely since the lockdown, hotels are obviously, pretty much wiped out. Like, a lot of them are opening maybe for essential worker services and all this kind of stuff. But even here locally, a couple of the hotels, they're trying to be a little bit different in terms of, I even seen one local hotel there, they brought a full bar basically out the front, and they're doing takeaway coffees and scones. They're kind of known for a little bit of afternoon tea and that kind of bit more upmarket kind of food. So they're bringing that out onto the street. But the problem is, they're a beautiful hotel, but they're slightly out of the way of any footfall inside in town. So I don't know how well it's doing for them. They're kind of just keeping that face going at the front.
Yeah, but there's a problem. But like any of those hotels, like even like you go back to level 3 and you're talking about serving stuff outside and stuff like that. That was fine during the summer, and we got away with it. Yeah. Ireland and the UK in November, December, January. Yeah. That's not going to. No, rain, snow, hurricane. It's just not. It's just not going to. It's not going to work. It's as simple as that. So there is going to have to be a rethinking. And again, I know that like both governments have had grants in place for like outdoor heating and stuff like that, but it was like $2,000. No, this needs to be a complete reimagining of outdoor space, in terms of heaters, shelters, so that you can actually run your business in a kind of a suitable kind of way. Like, I was in a pub just before lockdown, and it was all outside seating, but they had good heaters, big umbrellas, good seating, lots of space.
Like, so realistically, a $2,000 grant is going to buy you one good heater nearly.
If even, I'd say, if even. So, like, on the local side of things, I think that's going to be interesting in terms of how things are. Again, I use that word kind of reimagined in terms of how to attract internal tourists. And there's little things that people do. So, like, before lockdown kicked in again, I was up in Belfast on business. And we ended up going out for a few drinks that particular evening, and it was just such a unique experience that there was live music. Yeah. There's more you don't have live music, so you appreciate all of these things. So is there, like, I mean, look, there's loads of space in loads of city centres, you can have stages and stuff like that. So again, it's all about reimagining space, reimagining places, understanding how we can use not looking at businesses individually, but looking at this kind of cityscape and how we can bring businesses together. Like kind of like would you have a Christmas markets and stuff like that, but on a more permanent kind of a scale or basis.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it there about businesses kind of coming together as a community. What I did like seeing in the last little kind of, I'd say, break of freedom that we had before the lockdown was a lot of hotels were getting out and about locally and were promoting what they had locally, whether it's food markets or it's tourist attractions. And I think that was great, that they were getting this up on their page, something that they never they'd done a little bit of before, but they were actually doing it probably on a small budget. So they were actually going out with the phones, they were recording themselves, doing Instagram lives, and I actually found that way more interesting and exciting to watch, I suppose, than your stock images, your really high-end photography and content stuff, like, and your kind of real dreamy kind of videos of localities, like, so I think that's something that can't be forgotten about, is maybe look at what's around you in your community and see, can you actually educate people on what's in your locality, whether it's online, whether it's through video, whether it's blogs on websites. I think the businesses start to need to think about that. And I think, yes, we're in lockdown at the moment, but there's no harm in this happening or even building up a little bit of this work now if you're in the space to do it.
And I think it's down to governments as well. Like, councils and stuff like that. Like, I mean, at the moment, there's kind of, from what I've seen, there's a little bit of free rein there in terms of, you know, building outside space and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That should continue anyway. Like, that should have happened regardless of COVID in terms of the spaces and how businesses use spaces. So, no, look, I mean, like, everyone kind of understands Ireland as, you know, the kind of cosy pub, or whatever you want to call it, the trad inside the pub. That's not going to be the case going forward for a period of time. So again, I think that thought process needs to come to the fore of the next couple of months.
Well, I think it's going to be another thing to think about is, and I think you have a bit of notes there on it, is, you know, when we talk about this whole idea of support local and buy local and gift local and all this kind of stuff, we're obviously thinking about staycations and hotels and all this. You have a whole industry there in front of you in terms of Airbnb, where it's not something you think about gifting local, or you're not going to go out and buy, you know, Mary's room to give it to someone, you know, that kind of thing. It's a totally different industry in terms of tourism.
I think there it's interesting with Airbnb. So now that you mention it, so Airbnb had their initial IPO planned for for March. For any of our listeners, IPO is initial public offering, which is basically your launch of your brand onto the stock market. So I suppose Airbnb, what they had to do earlier this year is they had to raise about $2 billion in debt equity, because they lost about 400 million in terms of adjusted profit and loss in Q2. So what they are doing now is they are looking to launch their IPO, and a lot of people are kind of going, hang on now, you had a lot of other sharing economy apps like Uber, like Lyft, with the catastrophe that was WeWork, which we haven't covered on the podcast, but a lot of these sharing economy apps have taken a huge hit in terms of their IPO over the last kind of 12 months, thereabouts. And what I think is going to be quite interesting within this sector is how Airbnb do actually recover, and I think they're going to be more attractive than hotels in the immediacy, particularly the kind of luxury Airbnb products. Because if you take your hotels who have all these amenities built into them, they're all restricted now. There's no residence bar. The restaurant is restricted. You can only stay there for a certain amount of time. If there's a lockdown, does the whole place shut down, and therefore you can't get access to that hotel. So I think with Airbnb there's a huge opportunity there for them to capture that market, where it's all about flexibility.
You know what you're buying.
It's all about flexibility. And like Airbnb, to be fair to them, they're willing to invest in the customer experience to a level whereby the likes of Uber and all these other sharing economy apps are not. Like, I think they invested $150 million last year in basically safety around booking and verifying who owns properties and verifying the safety of properties, and what you buy is what it says on the tin, effectively. So they are going to have to, and they already have started investing in things like compliance around parties. Because that is obviously, look, if you can't go to a pub, a lot of people are just going to book an Airbnb somewhere up the country, bring 10, 15 of your mates, and Airbnb are investing in a lot of that in terms of trying to maintain compliance for local communities, because they recognise that they have done a lot of damage to local businesses in terms of what their brand stands for. So no, it's going to be interesting to see how that product evolves within a COVID world. I think Airbnb is a brilliant product, brilliant brand, use it the whole time, very, very simple to use, very straightforward, and how again it is reimagined is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. I think on the other element, then we talked about the hotel now and accommodation and all that kind of stuff. When you look at the whole area of flights as well, you know, in terms of actually travel, you know, we've had a lot of I suppose confusion, a lot of anger coming from even the travel companies, you know, in terms of Ryanair and Aer Lingus closing down flights in places.
Yeah, Michael O'Leary's not happy, is he?
He's not happy. He's not happy, Bunny.
No.
You know, but they're closing down flights. You know, they're making, like, even you look at here local to us, Cork Airport, and they're closing down a lot of even UK flights. You know, and people not only are looking to do that for leisure purposes, but a lot of people are relying on that for actual business and jobs. And, you know, and a lot of them are flying back for a week.
Yeah, I've had a few clients who struggle to get into the country effectively because the limitations around flights.
So I think this is another place where, you know, it's not even something that you have a massive amount of competition in. Like, you know, it's kind of, you're reliant on 1, 2, 3 kind of companies really kind of here in Ireland, I suppose, for the regional kind of flights around.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the airline. Like, I mean, I saw a bit of commentary during the week, which was basically that if you look at the balance sheets of some of the biggest airlines across Europe, the prediction is that with the amount of capital that Ryanair have on their books and the amount of free fixed assets that they have in terms of plane and fleet and so on and so forth, and because they are low frills, that there's a good chance that if they buy up a lot of slots, which a lot of other airlines are going to struggle to maintain post-COVID, kind of during that weird middle period where things start to open up again, Ryanair could be even bigger than they are now by kind of 2024, 2025, which I think is an interesting commentary. And again, I heard a comment a couple of weeks ago that a crisis is too big an opportunity to waste, and like, it's a horrible phrase, but for a lot of these businesses it is a huge opportunity for them to expand and for them to scale, and there is going to be a bit of a culling of the herd in many ways, where businesses that were probably just borderline breaking even, but they were still running as relatively decent companies, they're not going to be able to survive this hit, and therefore it gives an opportunity for the likes of Ryanair to turn industries into more oligopolistic type industries instead, which is dangerous. It's not good for competition, but it's probably the way things are going to go over the next couple of months.
I think, as you mentioned there about, seizing kind of opportunities maybe, and looking at ways of developing now and buying up opportunities or whatever, a lot of even local businesses have done that, in terms of their doors are closed, so if we have a bit of reserves in the bank and we probably we've a bit of faith that we're going to come out with this, they're starting to put money into the physical premises, and they're actually doing up their premises. They're there's a local nightclub there I'm thinking of, the whole place is gutted and they're pretty much starting again, so I think it probably is a good time to maybe, if you are in a position, I suppose, there's not many businesses that are going to be in that kind of position, but if you're in a position to start looking at your business to say, how can I improve it when I come out of this?
And it's straight, look, I mean, you mentioned the local business there. It's odd because, I mean, would I advise a business to invest in their retail premise at the moment? No, because COVID could be gone in 6 months, or it could be still here in 18 months, or it could be a version of that has evolved, or whatever the story is in terms of limited restrictions and stuff like that. So, like, if you're investing in your business to combat COVID and make your business COVID friendly, shall we say, well, that's all kind of well and good, but I mean, you could end up wasting a lot of money as well and limiting your capacity for afterwards. So it's a I don't envy business owners.
So I think we probably talked about it before, but like, what would you say businesses should start looking at? Maybe it's more so, especially in the tourism kind of industry.
You know what answer I'm going to give. It depends. It depends. It totally depends on your business, your reserves, staffing levels, your margins, volume type business that you are. It's not a magic wand. It's like, do this, like, do you know what I mean? It's completely context specific.
You should be saying marketing, getting in someone to help you.
They don't have any. Do you not just hear the conversation that we've just had? But yeah, there's other kind of like, and again, just to go back onto the again, looking at the Airbnbs and stuff like that. So one of the biggest success stories of the digital economy, shall we say, of TripAdvisor. Yeah. Like TripAdvisor at one point were worth more than Marriott, Hilton. So like the review site was worth more than the actual physical hotel industry in of itself, which is absolutely bizarre. But they used to make most of their revenue off advertising, so cost per click based advertising retail environment. And then also if people booked things through TripAdvisor in terms of experiences and things like that. So again, with an industry like that where there is no one advertising at the moment, really,
there's no one moving, you're not going out to restaurants, you're not going out to hotels, that model kind of
no, it's going to be tough. You are totally fucked. And I think when I would like to think that once we recover and the tourism industry opens up, once we get the opportunity, I'm getting on a flight and I am getting out of this country for as long as I physically can, because I am sick of living in my bedroom.
You have a podcast to record now.
No, never mind. I'll dial in. You can get a guest or something that week. But and in terms of that element, but I would imagine that the market's going to be very much saturated because everyone's going to be looking to get out, and therefore, is there a space for the Booking.coms or TripAdvisors when it's going to be saturated? Are the hotels going to give some of their real estate over to these companies?
It's going to be one or two ways, really. It's going to be, travel and accommodation abroad. They're either going to do one or two things. They're really going to try and drop their prices as much as they can to get people moving, or they're going to try and make up for the losses that they've made. And I think a lot of businesses, I know I would not like to see them going that way, but I know certain few countries, they were probably high up there anyway in terms of their prices for travelling anyway, and I think they're probably going to stay up there, which is not going to be encouraging for anyone to go.
No, but I think at the same time I think there'll be more of an onus on your Booking.coms, your TripAdvisors, and maybe the hotels can facilitate this as well. But it's going to be more about the overall experience. It's going to be like, if I'm booking a holiday or I'm going to a city, I'll book an Airbnb, I'll go there, and I'll kind of figure out what I'm going to do over there when I'm over there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't plan ahead, and a lot of people would be like that. In an environment where you don't really understand what the local restrictions are in relation to COVID, where you can go, where you can't go, do you have to book, is there time limits? When you don't have that local knowledge, then that ability to almost construct an itinerary, shall we say, in terms of what your stay is going to be like, so that you don't have the problem of showing up at a bar and realising, oh, I can't get in anywhere because everywhere is booking only and you had to book a week ago. So that almost tailoring the experience to the COVID environment that exists in a particular region, I think that's a gap that could possibly be filled by the likes of your TripAdvisors, your Booking.coms, or again even local hotels and stuff like that as well. So I think that could be an interesting area worth looking at and developing into the future for sure.
Definitely. I think we will come to wrap it up there now. Thanks again for everyone for listening in for this week. As I said, we'll see if we have I don't think there's any news out there yet of the next president, but we'll see on that for next week.
Big Joe president has to be Big Joe. If it's Trump, I'm gonna go on a tirade for the next podcast. It is going to be disgraceful. The orange man cannot get in again. Can't.
Be careful you say that.
It's the orange man, yeah. And by orange man, I'm referring to the fellow who wears fake tan and not. I'm not going to say it. Go on.
Don't say it. No. I think we'll leave it there. And thanks everyone for listening. You can follow us. You can subscribe to us. Keep up to date. And take care. We'll talk to you next week.
See you later.